I'm Miss Trotter, and I just wanted to share today about my memory of when 9/11 happened. I actually was working here the first time, my first stint at Southwest, and my office, I think, was actually where the Career Development Center is now, but I was over here, and I remember hearing that, you know, the trade towers had been hit, and I was just shocked. And of course, we didn't think that it was true. I think some of the students were talking about it, and I actually was pregnant with my daughter, Ashlyn, at the time, and I just remember thinking, you know, in a sense, once we figured out that it was happening, you know, kind of what am I bringing my daughter into? What kind of world is this? But, you know, obviously we came together as a United States, and I feel like for a long time, you know, we pulled together and we worked together. I'm certainly hoping that that happens again with everything that's going on now. So anyway, those are my memories, and certainly it still shakes me when I think about it, but I'm very close to where I was at that time in proximity in my office now. So anyway, that's what I remember.
We were in Texas at that time, at that day, and we actually went swimming that morning. My husband was clearing. He was in the military, and we were stationed in Fort Hood, which is the biggest military post in the U.S., I guess. And I was teaching at Central Texas College. So in the afternoon when I went to my classes, of course, we were a hot spot because we thought for sure that we would be the next target. So everybody was scared. They wouldn't let our foreign students fly home. Everything was on lockdown. And I was stuck at the school until late that night. That was my experience.
I was sitting in a 7th grade science class when the World Trade Center got hit on September 11th. And I remember there being kind of an overwhelming sense of fear and uncertainty, confusion, just kind of amongst everybody. Our teachers actually turned the news on, and it's almost like everything at school just really stood still. There was no work going on, there was a whole lot of uncertainty, and everybody just kind of sat in silence, not really knowing what was going on in the world. At the time, my 7th grade science teacher was a chief petty officer in the Navy, and I just remember him kind of pacing back and forth in the room, making phone calls. He was in tears, and he was just trying to get in touch with people that lived in that, you know, up in that area. So he was very nervous, and I could kind of, I guess, see that. You know, that day was kind of a different day. I remember going throughout the rest of the day a little bit nervous, scared, not really knowing what was going to happen. I actually got picked up at about lunchtime that day for a family funeral that I had to go to, so I got picked up early from school, and you know, we proceeded on to the funeral. My stepdad was actually out of town. He was up north of New York, and it actually took him close to 24 hours to get back because all flights were grounded, and him having to drive and reroute and go around everything in DC. But I remember that it was very different, and in the weeks coming and following that, it was very different. There was an overwhelming sense of unity that I don't think I'd ever seen before.
Well, I remember that morning well. I was a teacher here at Southwest Randolph, and I'd gone to the media center to take care of some things, and the TV was on, and I saw that a plane had hit a building in New York. We didn't really know what it was, didn't know much about it, but then a few minutes later, that second plane hit, and then we started getting scared, and then of course it was a whole morning of events that took place that let us know that things were going to be different. We were scared. I was a young mother at that time. I wanted to get to my kids. They were in school, but instead I was here, of course, with our students here. Students had lots of questions. There was just a very uneasiness that just spread across the campus, that also spread across our country, not knowing what was going to happen. Were there more planes? What buildings were they going to hit next? Never in my life have I feared for my safety as a U.S. citizen, but that day I feared for myself, I feared for my kids, and I feared for my country. Later on, when we found out that a Eastern Randolph student had been on the plane that went down in Pennsylvania, that really made it hit close to us, because she was my age. She was a mother. She had kids, and you know, she was on that plane trying to make a difference. And she did make a difference. She was just an ordinary student that did an extraordinary thing that day. And instead of that plane hitting, you know, another building, the Capitol, the White House, it hit a field, which is still extremely tragic. And we were so sad at that loss. But it made me happy that people were still feeling empowered and wanting to do things and wanting to make a difference to keep our country, you know, as safe as it could be. So that's my memory. And I don't want to forget that. And I don't want to take for granted my freedom ever again.
All right, so during September 11th, I was a freshman in high school in Maryland, and I was in an introduction to computer science class. They came over the intercom and said, turn on the news. We had seen where the first plane had hit the World Trade Center, and then we saw the second plane hit the World Trade Center on live TV. We also saw on live TV the plane hit the Pentagon, so I was just really upset. I remember my teacher was running around the room saying, why, crying, throwing his head down in shame. I was young, so it was hard for me to understand. But we let out school at noon. My father was in Northern Virginia. He came home early from work, which he never did. And my whole family was worried because we lived about 35 miles from Washington, D.C. We united as a community afterwards. A lot of my friends' parents worked for the government in Washington, D.C., so we were all worried about our parents. But all of our parents had made it home, so that was a really, really good thing. And it worried me to death, especially about my dad being as close to D.C. and working in government buildings. 2 years later, it inspired me to join the fire department, and I'm still a member of the fire department to this day. And to help my community. Been to 9/11 Memorial at Shanksville, Pennsylvania. That was probably one of my most memorable parts of my freshman year of college, is driving to Pennsylvania and seeing where the flight had come down in PA and meeting the guys from the fire department that were there. So it impacts me. It makes me tear up every time they talk about 9/11, because millions of brothers in the fire department lost their lives, and police officers and innocent human beings.
Okay, so for 9/11, I was in the 2nd grade. I remember our principal asked our teachers to turn the televisions on, so our entire 2nd grade class saw the planes hit live. It was very scary in the moment. We didn't know what's going on, so a lot of the information we got from our parents, but seeing my parents afraid was one thing that scared me the most. So in the weeks that followed, we were really worried about something else happening. It was a lot of panic, but it was good to see Americans come together and really stand for something as truly a united front.
So where was I on 9/11? I was a young captain training second lieutenants how to be second lieutenants in the Army. I was up in Aberdeen, Maryland, which is north of Baltimore, about an hour-ish. We were actually in the woods training them how to walk through the woods and be leaders and be soldiers. When we heard through the radio what had gone on, and honestly, I really didn't know how to feel, but I figured we were in the right place doing the right thing, and that really didn't change anything for us in the moment. So we went back to training lieutenants. We got through the day, we talked about it, let them watch some TV, let them deal with it, and then we got up the next morning and told them, hey, check it out. You came in the Army to be a soldier. It was September 11th, obviously. They graduated in December, and we told them, you're now training for real. You could very well, upon graduation, go to a unit and be deployed somewhere to a hot, sunny place, defending America. So what it did was it very much focused our lieutenants on what they were going to do, what they were going to be. It wasn't just going to school for the sake of going to school. There was a purpose. That was less than a year into a 2-year job for me. I was happy to be where I was, doing what I was doing, feeling like I was making a difference, even though I wasn't on the front line. And then I worked, that kind of led into, in 2003, me changing jobs and going to a job where I knew I was going to go to a hot, sandy place and do what I could to defend America. So that's where I was and what I was doing and how I was feeling on 9/11.
On 9/11, I was in the 11th grade sitting in my American history class, and we were having a conversation about what it meant to protest and how to support our country when we found out that this all happened. So it became very real to us very quickly. I also had a classmate who lost a family member in the plane crash in Pennsylvania, so it became very personal for all of us for a long time after that as well.
So on 9/11, I was here at Southwestern Randolph High School for my second year of teaching. And I remember Mrs. Napier came by, who was our librarian, and told us to turn on our TVs back in the day when we had TVs and cable in the classroom. And we couldn't believe what we were seeing. It looked like a horrible accident, these planes that were, hitting the Twin Towers. And I remember the students and I sitting there watching the entire day. And as second block started, we noticed that in the picture that was behind the anchor that was talking about what was going on, we saw one of the towers just fall. And we all kind of just looked at each other and we're like, did that just happen? And I think everybody just kind of stopped. You didn't know how to feel, you didn't know how to think. And as the day went on, I think there was a very, there was that idea, that kind of that underlying feeling of scared. What was gonna happen? What were we gonna do? Kids were asking about the fact that we had football games scheduled for that week. Were we gonna be able to come? And people just really didn't know what to do. And as the days and weeks went on and you realized that, they weren't gonna find anybody else, and, you realized that you had truly been attacked, it was something that I think as Americans we had never felt before. So it was definitely something to remember.